Hello everyone, welcome to Tutors. Today we are going to start the new chapter in 11th Standard Biology, that is, the living world. I would like to request all of you to please be thorough with the textbook after going through this video. Since the topic is living world, the first important word here is life. What is life? When do we call an organism is living? We have a lot of things that come into our mind when we think about life. Like, we might think growth as a factor growth as a factor which determines an organism is living, or it might be reproduction. An organism reproducing is living, or metabolism, and even consciousness. So, these are the four important factors which we must ponder about. And now we are going to discuss about each of these factors one by one and make sure that actually do they define a living organism. We will start with growth. All living organisms grow. An increase in mass and increase in number are the twin characteristics of growth. In plants, the growth is present throughout their life. Plants grow throughout their life. But in the case of animals, like humans, we can grow only up to a particular age. So, after we stop growing, it doesn't mean that we are not living, right? Also, considering the body mass, even non living organisms can grow. Like mountains, due to the accumulation of soil and rocks, they also have an increase in their body mass. So, can they be called living? No. So, in organisms, growth cannot be taken as a defining property of living organisms. The next one is reproduction. It is a characteristic feature of living organisms. Multicellular organisms can reproduce by both sexual and asexual methods. When we think about asexual methods, in fungi, they reproduce via asexual as well as sexual spores. In yeast and hydra, they can reproduce by budding. And in case of planaria, they can regenerate. That is, a small part, a fragment of their body can result in the formation of a new organism. Also, in multicellular organisms, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. That is, growth is different and reproduction is different. We are saying it here because in unicellular organisms, growth and reproduction both go hand in hand. Why is it so? Because in unicellular organism, when we say growth, we say increase in number is also a growth. But for a unicellular organism, when they increase in number, it is actually reproduction going on, like in the case of bacteria or amoeba. So in unicellular organism, growth and reproduction cannot be taken as two different things. They actually mean the same thing. Also, there are many living organisms that do not reproduce at all, like mules, sterile worker bees, even infertile human couples, but they are living, right? So, even reproduction cannot be a defining feature of living organisms. Next, we have metabolism. All living organisms are made up of chemicals, and these chemicals, they are big, small, belonging to various classes, sizes, function, etc., and they are constantly being changed into one form or other in the body. So, what do you mean by metabolism? The sum total of all the chemical reactions that are occurring in our body is called metabolism. Yes, all uh, non-living organisms do not exhibit metabolism. No non-living organism exhibit metabolism. Metabolism is a defining feature of all living organisms because all living organisms can exhibit metabolism because of these various chemical reactions that are taking place in our body that keeps us living. Hence, metabolism is a factor. Now, the final thing is consciousness. Living organisms can sense their surroundings and respond to these stimuli, which could be physical, chemical, or biological. All living organisms can sense their stimuli. can sense their environment. So all living organisms are aware of what is happening in their surroundings and they can respond to it. Like plants, they respond to photoperiod. That is the time for which they receive sunlight. It greatly affects their flowering. And even us, we are also aware of what is happening and then we act accordingly. And human beings are the only organism which have self consciousness, who are aware of what they are. In addition to what is happening around them, we know what we are. So, consciousness therefore becomes a defining feature of living organisms because all living organisms are conscious about what is happening around them and non living organisms are not conscious. So, out of the four factors which we have described, growth and reproduction, both are not the defining feature of living organism. Metabolism and consciousness are. Hence, living organisms are self-replicating, evolving and self-regulating interactive systems capable of responding to external stimuli. We are moving on to the next topic, that is diversity in living world. We know that there are different kinds of organisms that are present on this earth and the number of species that are known till now is 1.7 to 1.8 million according to the NCERT textbook. So this is the value that we must follow. The number and types of organisms that are present on earth is called biodiversity. The term biodiversity was coined by Walter G. Rawson. Now, since there are a lot of organisms that are present on this earth, it is necessary so that if we had to study about an organism, we should be able to name it, right? So, we had to standardize the name of living organism so that this organism, suppose we take a cat, this cat is called a cat in each and every part of this world. This cat cannot be given different names, otherwise it would be very confusing, right? So we have to give a standard name for this organism, and this is called nomenclature. And in order for us to name the organism, we should identify the organism, right? So, based upon its characteristics, the first thing that we should do is we should be able to identify this organism properly. So, first we identify the organism and then we name it accordingly. Now, biologists and other scientists have evolved certain criteria, certain rules by which organisms are named. So, in case of plants, we have the International Code for Botanical Nomenclature that provides strict guidelines on how a plant should be named. Similarly, we have the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature, which gives us criteria on how an animal should be named. So let us see more about nomenclature. Now when we provide a scientific name for organism, there are a variety of nomenclature, but the one which we are following is the binomial nomenclature. In binomial nomenclature, an organism has a scientific name which consists of two parts and hence binomial. And this method of nomenclature was started by Carolus Linnaeus. Now this scientific name, it consists of two parts. First one is a generic name and the second one is a specific epithet. For example, Mangifera indica. This is mango. So it has two parts, Mangifera and indica. Mangifera indicates the generic name and indica indicates the specific epithet. Now there are some more rules which helps us in for doing the binomial nomenclature. The first one, generally most of the names that we give them is derived from Latin, and when written they are actually they are printed in italics. The first word represents the genus and the second word represents the species. Like in Mangifera, Mangifera indicates a genus and Indica indicates a species. So when handwritten, both the words should be underlined separately, or when printed they should be printed in italics. And finally, we should be very careful that when we write the generic name, it should begin with a capital letter and the specific epithet should begin with a small letter. So what are the four rules? Generally, all these words are from italics. The first word represents genus. Second word represents species. When handwritten, they should be separately underlined or printed in italics. Genus should start with capital letter and species should start with small letter. Sometimes the name of the author is also written, like Mangifera indica Linn, to show that this organism or this species was described by Linnaeus. That is why Linn. Next we have classification. The process by which anything is grouped into convenient categories based on easily observable characters. Now, there are different kinds of organisms around us, like cats, dogs, etc. Actually, the cats, dogs, these are also a type of classification. Rice, wheat, etc., mammals. All these are classification because all of them have something in common, and that's why they are placed in a separate group. All dogs look similar, all cats look similar, that is why. So, this process is called classification, and each category which we call is actually now we are going to refer it to as taxa. Taxa refers to the categories at different levels. Now, based on characteristics, all living organisms can be classified into different taxa, and this process of classification is called taxonomy. Now, the external and internal structure, along with the structure of the cell, developmental process, and ecological information of organisms, are important in modern taxonomical studies. So, characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature are the process that are basic to taxonomy. So, taxonomy includes the four process, that is characterization, identification, classification, and finally the nomenclature. Next, we have a new term that is called systematics. Now, this is a branch of biology that deals not only with the diversity of organisms but also considers the evolutionary relationship among them. Systematics takes into account evolutionary relationship between the organisms. Now, the word systema. Systema is a Latin word which means systematic arrangement of organisms. And Linnaeus used Systema Naturae as a title of his publication. Later, the scope of systematics was enlarged to include identification, nomenclature, and classification also. So, systematics now also include identification, nomenclature, and classification. You must just understand that it is a branch of biology that deals with in addition to the diversity of organisms, they also take into account the evolutionary relationship between them. So, we are going on to the next important part, that is the taxonomic categories. Now, we are going to say about taxonomic hierarchy. Now, we have classified organisms into different categories, and each category is a part of the overall taxonomic arrangement, and all these categories together constitute the taxonomical hierarchy. Now, what do you mean by a hierarchy? Hierarchy is a process by which we are arranging categories according to their rank. These ranks may be based upon a particular criteria. So, taxonomic hierarchy, we are arranging going to arrange the organisms according to some ranks, and this is called taxonomical hierarchy. And the unit of classification, that is each category which is referred to as a unit of classification, it represents actually a rank, and it is commonly called taxon. So, taxonomic studies of all organisms have led to the development of common categories like kingdom, phylum, etc. Now, this line will be more familiar when we go further. So, we are going to classify the organisms from the lowermost, from the basal part, and then we are going higher and higher. So, the most basic classification of organism is species. Now, species is a group of individual organisms with fundamental similarities. Like you say, we are humans, and humans are called Homo sapiens. Now, all Homo sapiens, like all humans, uh, they can be grouped into a single category. Similarly, we have different kinds of organisms like Mangifera indica, Solanum tuberosum, which is potato, Panthera leo, which indicates lion, and Homo sapiens, which indicates humans. So, in all the names like indica, tuberosum, leo, and sapiens, they represent the specific epithet, while the first words, that is Mangifera, Solanum, Panthera, and Homo, they are the genera. So, each genus may have one or more than one specific epithet representing different organisms. Like, for example, Panthera. We know Panthera, there is Panthera leo, Panthera tigris, which is tiger, and Panthera pardus, which indicates lion. So, we know that they are related, but lions are different, tigers are different, leopards are different. But we know that they have a common connection. That is the next level of classification. That is, their genus is the same, but they are different species. But they have the same genus, which we are going to describe next. Genus are a group of related species like Solanum tuberosum and Solanum melongena. That is Solanum tuberosum, which is potato. Solanum melongena, which is brinjal. Potato and brinjal, they do not look the same, but they have the same genus. They are related because different characters, other than such morphological characters, there are some characters which are very common for them. So they are coming under the same genus. To understand better, we have Panthera, as I said, Leo, Pardus, and Tigris. All the leopards, tigers, and lions, they are different species, but they are a common genus. That is, all of them are coming under the genus Panthera. Next, we have family. Family is a group of related genera. The families are categorized on the basis of vegetative and reproductive features in plant species. Now we will study a chapter later called morphology of flowering plants, in which we have to study about three different families. And when we study about those families, we will realize how important vegetative and reproductive features of plant species are in describing a family. So we have the family Solanaceae. Solanaceae is the family, and under that we have the three genus Solanum, Petunia, and Datura. So all these genus are coming under the same family Solanaceae or Felidae. The family Felidae consists of Panthera and Felis. Now Panthera, it includes lions, tigers, leopards, etc. Felis, the genus Felis include cats. Now the cats and the lions become related as they have a common family Felidae. Next we have the order. Order refers to a group of similar family of organisms. Like we have the order Polymoniales. The Polymoniales is actually including the family Solanaceae and Convolvulaceae. And the order Carnivora is including Felidae and Canidae. Here is where the dogs and the cats become related. Felidae, which includes the cats, and Canidae, which includes the dogs. Now the dogs and the cats, they have a same order Carnivora. Next we have class. Class includes related orders like Mammalia. The class Mammalia consists of two orders, that is Primata and Carnivora. Now this Primata includes monkeys, gorilla, gibbons, etc. Even humans. Humans are also coming under Primata. And Carnivora includes tiger, dogs, cats. So here is where humans, monkeys, dogs, cats, everything become related, because finally all of us are mammals. We are belonging to the class Mammalia. Next is phylum or division. Phylum, we use the word phylum when we are describing animals, and division when we are describing about plants. Now this includes the related classes. Next, we have the kingdom. Kingdom is the highest category of classification. Now we have 5 kingdoms to learn about: Monera, Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia, which shall be dealt in the next chapter. So, kingdom is the highest level of classification. Now, this is a table that is given in our textbook, and if you are preparing for competitive examinations like NEET, you have to be thorough with these. Also, uh, for 11th standard also we have to study this table, as they may ask us to give the taxonomic categories of housefly or mango. We have to write this like that. Like if they asked us about man, we had to write Homo sapiens. Sapiens is a species and Homo is a genus. We can see that we belong to the family Hominidae, and the order is Primata, class Mammalia, phylum or division. Here we are using phylum, which is Chordata, and finally we belong to the kingdom Animalia. Housefly Musca domestica. Musca is a genus, Domestica is a species, family Muscidae, order Diptera, class Insecta, phylum Arthropoda, and kingdom Animalia. Mango Mangifera indica. Indica is a species, Mangifera is a genus, family Anacardiaceae, order Sapindales, class Dicotyledone, division Angiospermae, and kingdom Plantae. Wheat Triticum aestivum, aestivum species, Triticum genus, family Poaceae, order Poales, and class Monocotyledone, division Angiospermae, kingdom Plantae. Now this might seem difficult, but if we practice it and we revise it, we'll be able to learn, because this is such an important table and we have to learn it. So we are going through all these the taxonomical categories one by one. This is the hierarchical arrangement in descending order. We have kingdom, the highest level. Then we have phylum or division. Then class, order, family, genus, and finally species. Now the thing we must remember is that when we talk about a kingdom, when we take a kingdom Animalia, there are a lot of diverse organisms. The number of similarities among them is less. But as we move down, we can see that we go to phylum, class, order. The number of common characteristics among them increases, and finally we have the species, which include the similar type of organism, very similar type of organisms. So the similar characteristic, it is least in kingdoms and it is the most in species. Now we are going on to the last part of this chapter, which is the taxonomical aids. Now, suppose we have got an organism, or we want to study more about an organism. So these taxonomic aids will help us to know more about the organism. Identification of organisms require intensive laboratory and field studies. So the collection of actual plus specimens of plant and animal species is essential and is the prime source of taxonomic studies. Sometimes the specimens which may become extinct tomorrow, they need to be preserved for future studies. So taxonomic aids, we are going to learn about 5 taxonomic aids. Aids means actually helping us, right? So it helps us in identification and to study more about the organism. The first one is herbarium. Second one, botanical gardens. Third one, museum. Fourth one, zoological parks. And fifth one is the key. Let us start with herbarium. What is herbarium? Herbarium is a storehouse of collected plant species that are dried, pressed, and preserved on sheets. What do? We get a plant, we find it unique. So we dry it, press it, and then it is preserved on sheet along with some information, and then we are keeping it safely in a big storehouse. That is what a herbarium does. So further, these sheets are arranged according to a universally accepted system of classification. So when we are searching for a species, if we go according to the classification, we can easily find that. So it is easy for us. And the herbarium sheets. So in the herbarium sheet, we have the plant specimen, and along with that we have some information about the plant specimen, like date and place of collection, English, botanical and local names, family, collector's name. So the herbaria serve as quick reference system in taxonomical studies. So these are the pictures of the preserved plant specimens, which also consist of the information about them. Next we have the botanical gardens. Botanical gardens, these specialized gardens have collections of living plants for reference. So the main difference between herbarium and botanical garden is that in herbarium we have the preserved plant specimens. They are not living. But in botanical gardens we are having the living plant specimens. So the plant specimens in this garden are grown for identification purpose, and each plant is labeled indicating its botanical or scientific name and its family. Like we have to study about three botanical gardens which is mentioned in our textbook, which is Kew in England, Indian Botanical Garden in Howrah, and National Botanical Research Institute in Lucknow. Be thorough with these three botanical gardens. Next we have museum, which all of you will be familiar. Museum have collection of preserved plant and animal specimens for study and further reference. So the specimens, they may be preserved in jars and containers in preservative solutions so that they do not decay. Plants and animals may also be stored as dry specimens. Insects, they are kept in insect boxes after collecting, killing and pinning. Larger, larger animals like mammals like birds and all, they are usually stuffed and preserved. And there are collection of skeleton of animals also present in museum. Next we have the zoological parks. Zoological parks are otherwise called zoo. They are very familiar to us. Here the wild animals are kept in protected environment under human care, which enable us to learn more about their food habits and behavior. Here, as far as possible, their conditions are similar to their natural habitats. That is about zoological parks. Finally, we have a very new and as well as a very important taxonomical aid, which is called key. Now, the taxonomical aid that helps in identification of plants and animals based upon their similarities and dissimilarities. Actually, what is a key? A key is based upon contrasting characters, generally in a pair called couplets. Now, suppose I have an organism and I don't know what it is. So I take the reference of a key. Now the key consists of two contrasting statements. Now these two statements are together called couplet, and each statement in the key is called a lead. Now the statement will be like, does this organism which you possess consist of this characteristic? So I have an option yes or no. So if the answer is yes, they will ask us to move on to the next couplet. Or and if the answer is no, it may ask us to go to another couplet. So this couplet, what do they actually do? They help in leading us to the final answer. And separate taxonomic keys are required for each taxonomic category. That is for kingdom, phylum, etc. It will be different. So actually key helps in identification of the organisms. And keys are generally analytical in nature. Finally, we have to study, we are getting to know about three more taxonomical aids. That is, one is flora. Flora gives an actual account of habitat and distribution of plant species of a given area. That is, they provide index to the plant species of a particular area. We are able, with the help of a flora, we can know about the plant species in a particular area. Manuals, they provide information for identification of names of species found in an area. Finally, we have monographs. The monograph consists of information about any one taxon. So here we have come to a conclusion. The chapter is quite easy and it will be easy to understand after reading the textbook also. I request you to through the textbook, be familiar with that table and study well. This chapter is very easy and we shall meet with the next chapter. Thank you.